We are live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Q&A session for the Digital Advertising Superstars. I'm Patrick Gilbert. With me is Danielle Immerman, Adventure Media's content queen. Isaac Radansky is conspicuously absent today. It's the first of the month, and Isaac has a bunch of stuff on his plate. So we figured we'd be better off without him. Not really, but he wishes he could join. So we're going to get through a couple questions today. Want to start off by plugging the book, Join or Die, Digital Advertising in the Age of Automation, now available on Amazon, or as Isaac would say, everywhere books are sold, which is just Amazon. But actually online, you can get it at Barnes & Noble. There's a bunch of other retailers. But check it out, Join or Die, Digital Advertising in the Age of Automation. It's It teaches you how to kind of introduce the new technology that's driving Facebook and Google ads and all these digital advertising platforms, how to understand the technology and leverage it to see success. There's also a lot of tips about just overall strategy, running an agency, how to hire the right people, so on and so forth. It's sort of Adventure Media's, I don't know, we put a lot of work into it, I guess I would say. Check that out. I also, before we dive into anything specific, also, guys, if you have questions, please put them into the comments. We'll read as many of them as we can. Another thing that I want to plug before we get too deep into the weeds here, the How to Hide a Dead Body podcast. It's Adventure Media's podcast. It's hosted by myself, Isaac, and Danielle. Please check it out, subscribe. You can get it Apple, Spotify, really anywhere you get your podcasts. Super excited about an episode that's going to be dropped later this week. An episode that we did with Kirk Williams and Mike Ryan about the topic of smart shopping and just everything that's happening with Google and data and privacy. It was an incredible conversation. It went very long. It was like an hour and a half or something. It was one of the most insightful conversations I think that I've ever been a part of on the digital advertising topics, and I'm really excited. It'll come out this Wednesday. It's going to be excellent. Seriously, check it out. Subscribe. If you want to look at the previous library, we have some great content in there as well. Specifically, a couple weeks ago, we did something with Danielle where we talked about her role as the content queen. So check it out. How to Hide a Dead Body podcast presented by Adventure Media. Okay, enough of the advertising. Let's get into some actual questions here. Danielle, what are we starting with?
I think we should start with just a briefing on iOS 14. People have had some questions about how that impacts advertising, and we would love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, iOS 14, it's so it's the new update for Apple. And the big thing with this is that once users update their iOS system, they're now going to start get prompted to opt into personalized advertising, which is, they're going to ask it a different way. They're going to say, do you want to share data with Facebook and Instagram as you go into that, which is really Apple's direct, like it's mostly going to affect Facebook on this regard and other platforms as well. But Facebook's the one that is most concerned right now. It affects in two ways. The first thing is that as users opt out, which most of them will, that's kind of like, I don't see the average person is going to willingly agree to personalized advertising. Most people are going to opt out. Now, me, as somebody that I feel like I have a good understanding of how this works, I actually prefer personalized advertising. This sounds like I'm kind of drinking the Kool-Aid here, but like, look, I get a lot of good targeted ads on Facebook and Instagram, and I enjoy it. Like, I would much rather see ads for that than to see ads for things that I'm not actually interested in. And I think the general public has this idea that if it's personalized, like if you opt out of it, you're not going to get any ads. That's not the case, people. So spread the movement. Let's all opt into personalized advertising. That's, I guess, for a different talk show. But so iOS 14, it's going to affect Facebook's ability to track data particularly across platform. So a lot of or across device is really what I meant to say. A lot of Facebook data is earned by you being logged into Facebook or Instagram on your phone, and also on your PC and your iPad and your smart TV. And when you navigate the web and interact with all these different platforms, all this data kind of gets pushed together to give a pretty good understanding of who you are as a consumer. Now, as you start to break down some of those barriers, you're not able to get that mobile tracking. You start to lose some of that data connection. So it's really going to affect Facebook's ability to drive performance, especially if you leaned on kind of broad targeting of saying like, okay, well, I need to do like interest-based targeting. People that are interested in, they're in the market for a new apartment, they're in the market for a car. Facebook's going to know less information about people. Doesn't mean it's not going to be accurate. It's just going to mean that the pool is going to shrink. So that's the first thing. It's probably going to affect overall performance. The second thing is on the reporting side. This has kind of started to affect people over the last couple of weeks, which is Facebook now is a different attribution window. It used to be 28-day click or 1-day view. Now it's just looking at 7-day click, 1-day view. A lot of people are panicking because they're seeing their conversions drop off a cliff. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's happening. There's settings inside Facebook to go look at a larger attribution window, and you can get an apples to apples comparison. So if all of a sudden, if you look at the last week compared to what you're used to, let's say you've been running Facebook ads for the last 2 years, and you know that you generally average about a $50 cost per conversion. And last week you looked at your account and your CPAs jumped up to like $300. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's happened. It's just a different attribution window. So double check the way that the reporting is coming through, and try and get an apples to apples comparison. Both of these topics are complicated. It doesn't mean that Facebook is like doomed, or that we should all stop like pulling our ad budgets away from Facebook, or that we should start putting budget somewhere else or looking for the next big thing. It's just we need to change the way that we're operating and thinking about this platform. There are great ways to track your own performance and reporting on actual conversion data that's being attributed to Facebook. You just have to do some of the more manual work yourself. And again, I'm not going to dive into that now because that's like a whole can of worms, but it's possible. Just because you don't see it in the dashboard doesn't mean you can't be doing your own reporting. On the performance side, it is a little more tricky. It really depends on who you're going after. One thing I'll say with that, though, is there's still a lot of people in the world that use Android. So that's kind of the silver lining here. Not everybody uses Apple. There's like a ton of support information on Facebook. If you go to Facebook's Blueprint resource library, I think it's called, you'll get all the information in the world about how to set yourself up in this new iOS 14 thing, whatever. There's a lot you can read about it. My main takeaway from it is you have to think differently about it, but let's not all panic at once. That's the short answer.
I like it. All right. We have some few questions. Let's dive into them. We have a question here on branded search campaigns.
Okay. I have branded search campaigns and non-branded search campaigns running, and I'm ready to start RLSA, which is remarketing lists and search ads. Should I make a whole new campaign for my remarketing audience, or just add the audience to a brand campaign and make a bid adjustment on that audience? Okay, good question. A few things here, and I would leave the question up, Danielle, by the way, for the time being, mostly because I'm going to forget some of the details of it. When, just in general, when you're using smart bidding, you're not going to need to make a bid adjustment. Whether it's maximize conversions or target CPA or target ROAS, if you assign your remarketing lists to your search campaigns, the algorithm will be able to factor in the expected impact of somebody being on that audience into the auction. It'll happen in real time. So you don't necessarily need to say, okay, well, I know that my previous website visitors are twice as likely to convert. So I want to increase, I want to put a plus 100% bid adjustment on a user that's on that list. You don't need to do that anymore because Google will already know that and it'll factor it into the auction. That's number one. but that's not even really what you're asking. The real question is RLSA campaigns and branded and non-branded. I don't think that you should split it out unless there's a specific reason as to why you should have a different budget and different ad copy. So in general, I think absolutely every single search campaign that you have should have your remarketing lists added. The reason for that is the real, your remarketing lists and your customer data is the main advantage that you have over your competitors. Because in a world with ubiquitous data, where everybody, we all have access to the same data. We're all using Google, and we're all using Google Smart Bidding. The only thing that you have over your competitor is your customer data that you're feeding back into the system. So absolutely, make sure that you are making a priority. You're making it a priority to create those segmented remarketing lists and to think about what would be valuable, and then make sure you're adding it to your search campaigns so that you can leverage that data in the auction. Now, the real question here that we're asking is whether or not you should create a separate campaign. I don't think so. The only reason that I think you should is if you have like a promo code where it's like, okay, we're gonna run 15% off, but only to people that are cart abandoners. So now you're gonna do a non-branded search campaign or whatever, and you're gonna say, okay, well, use promo code 15 off and come back, and you only want to have that for that subset of the audience. It's generally not something that's done very often, because who cares if you're going to do a promo, just do a promo. But that's really it. I would say I'm a big fan of campaign consolidation, fewer campaigns, more liquidity, as we talk about throughout the book. So I try and find as few instances as possible to separate those things out. I just want to make sure I answered everything. Branded campaigns, non-branded search campaigns, running branded. Yeah. So if you have a specific reason to do RLSA, separate it out. If not, I would say do it all in the same campaign.
Next question on the topic of online education.
Okay. Planning for campaigns for online education provider. They offer short-term certificates as well as master's degree. My target audience is the same, in the same geographic areas. How can I best segment the target audience to acquire leads for both programs? This is interesting. Thanks for answering. Okay, so I happen to have a bit of experience in the same realm. Now it depends on what you're asking or what platforms you're doing here and what your goal is. So if you're doing like a straight up, like if you have different clients and they're different, if they're different universities that you're generating leads for and you have to fill a quota, then you have to separate everything out, right? So if you're working with, Harvard is one of your clients and Yale is another one of your clients, then you have to separate everything out. But if you're working with one client and every single lead is essentially the same to them, then what does it matter? Just put everything together and try and look for the lowest cost leads that you can get. As far as the target audience, I think that the way I would still separate it out. So I would still have different campaigns for the different degrees, especially if they're different. Like if it's subtle differences, if you're advertising game design and game development, and the target audience you're going after is pretty similar, and they might choose this, they might choose that. If you're targeting, like a marketing degree and a digital marketing degree, then it's probably the same person you're going after. But if you're advertising psychology and accounting, or criminal justice and botany, then you should probably separate those out. The main tool that I would leverage here, to go back from the previous question, is your remarketing audiences. So figure out, okay, can I get a customer list of the previous leads that have converted for my criminal justice program? And can I leverage that, whether it's, if it's a similar audience in Google or if it's a lookalike audience in Facebook, can I get a list of those people specifically? Or if you don't have that data, is there content on my website that would show that this person is interested in criminal justice versus psychology? And can I tailor my ads accordingly? So I would say just like figure out, like, does it make sense? Does it logically make sense to separate these two things out? And then make your campaign structure around that. Hope that helps.
Nice. And I think we'll end this live Q&A with a question from our guy, Simone.
Love it. Okay, I have a client who sells two very distinct products on the same web page. In order for the Google algorithm to learn who my core target audience is it enough to create two separate campaigns? In addition to this, do you recommend changing the conversion tags for each campaign? Thanks and a big hug. So Simone's also referencing the book, the section in the book called Controlling the Inputs, about how to change and influence the algorithm. I think, okay, so let me look back at this question here, because this is a good question, but it's not exactly the easiest to answer. So is it enough to create two separate campaigns in addition to this? One, I think it depends on volume. You don't want to start splitting things up if you're going to start getting only a few hundred clicks per week in either campaign. There's no rule of thumb as far as how many clicks you should be trying to get for each specific product, but you'll get a gut feeling for it. I don't think you need to. Okay, so as far as what these two products are, that plays a big factor. They're two distinct products, but is one of them not relevant? Because I'll give you an example. We had a client that sold microscopes, and their primary product were these very, very sophisticated, expensive microscopes that were being sold in bulk to universities and labs and all these other things. Also on the website, they sold a children's version of the microscope, which was really a hobby, like a hobbyist sort of thing. The price of these two different products was wildly different, like hundreds of dollars different. So, and at some point of us optimizing the campaigns, we found that the algorithm was figuring out it was easier to sell the children's microscope. So we started to get more impressions for that for that product, and we started to get more sales. Now, I mean, this is the part of the book that talks about survivorship bias. It's not as if I'm going to go back to the client and say, like, hey, listen, maybe you should just like throw out your business strategy and focus exclusively on children's microscopes because we're selling a lot of them. That's bad. That's falling victim to survivorship bias. What was happening was the algorithm just figured out that it was easier to sell product B than product A. And we need to steer it back in the direction of product A, because customers that buy product A, the laboratories and the universities, that's who our core audience is. That's what our business is built around. So in that case, maybe I would use a separate conversion action. I would not count a conversion, or I would count a different conversion that maybe wasn't counted in the conversions column, meaning Google wasn't specifically optimizing for that conversion when they bought the children's microscope. As far as a separate campaign, that's also hard to say, because ultimately, if people are going to Google and searching the word microscopes, they could mean anything. It could be a university looking for one. It could also mean a parent looking for a Christmas gift for their child. So what are you going to do? Separate that out into different campaigns and try to get really cute with audience tracking? Like, no, it's going to be impossible. So what you really need to do in that instance is you need to figure out, okay, well, I'm going to maybe pull this product out of my Google shopping feed. And maybe I'm going to, maybe you're going to go as far as pulling it off your website. At the very least, you can stop counting conversions in the conversions column when that happens. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. I think it comes down to, like, do you actually care about both of these products? And are they purchased by the core audience that you're actually trying to build a marketing program around? That's kind of the main thing to solve for. Cool.
Yes. Parting words.
Parting words. First of all, I just want to say I really appreciate all of the engagement that we've been getting on these videos. We've been getting a lot of comments, and not enough that we've been able to get to. I'm going to try and do a better job of getting to some of the comments after the feed, like in some of the easier ones that can be commented for, just in the thread below. So if you have a comment, please post it. We'll try to get to it. If not, Danielle goes through the previous week's recording before doing the next week's video. So it's great. We'll try to get to as many of these as possible. It is fantastic. We love hearing from everyone in the group. It's amazing. Like when Isaac started this group, he never thought it would get to how engaged and how helpful it has become. So it really is wonderful. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the community. As far as plugging stuff again, join or die digital advertising in the age of automation. It's everything we've been talking about over the last, I mean, look, there's a lot in this book. It's a very long, hefty book. It is absolutely well worth your money. It is, trust me, I've been buying other similar books on Amazon to try and compare. And I don't want to brag, but it's really good compared to the others. But I would say it's on sale right now on Amazon. You get a paperback version for $20. Get it while you can. The second thing I'll say, check out the How to Hide a Dead Body podcast. Subscribe. A new episode is coming out on Wednesday that is going to be excellent. It is with Kirk Williams of Zato. He goes by, you may have seen his content on at PBC Kirk. He writes a lot of content on the Search Engine Land blog, and he's kind of everywhere in this community. Has a lot of really great thoughts on smart shopping. It's with him and Mike Ryan, who's of a company called Smarter E-commerce. He's on the product side. A brilliant guy. We had a fantastic conversation, the three of us and Isaac, last week about smart shopping and where that whole part of the industry is going. So please check it out. It's going to be really exciting. And please let us know any feedback you have. All right. Thanks again. Thanks, Danielle.